Good evening. Well, it's evening where I am. Hello, welcome. My name is Steve, and this is Christianity Out Loud. Sorry, I overthought that introduction there for a minute, but there you go. It is evening at time of recording this here in Brisbane, Australia. Hey, thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, great. If you're watching on Rumble, great. If you're watching on Locals, good evening or good morning, good day, hello to the Locals community. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of this growing little community and channel and thing that I'm trying to do here. So, hey, if you're not subscribed, but you like and appreciate what I'm trying to do here, want to be a part of it, hit the subscribe button. I'll talk properly, and then the notification will come up when a new one of these weekly words is up. I'm doing my best to get one up every week. There will be weeks when actual work gets in the way, but I managed to get there this week. Fair bit on this week. Western Australian Premier, everybody's favourite, Mr. Mark McGowan. He's under a lot of pressure to open up his borders to let people in, or as the rest of us say, abide by the Constitution of Australia. Tomato. Either way. Australia's former Chief Health Officer. I can't remember. It's one of them. Chief Health Officer. Says it's actually time to rethink masks on children. And the rest of us go, well, yes, that'd be great. And how about while we're on the idea of thinking about redoing the mask mandate on children, why don't we hold the people who made these decisions and put these mandates in place, why don't we hold them accountable for the developmental harm that these masks have done to children? They don't recognise facial expressions, their jaw muscles aren't forming properly, they're not learning to communicate, etc. It's also, I don't know what it would be like being 8 years old and being forced to wear a mask. I'm not 8, but I'm certainly not forcing my children to do it. That's ridiculous. And carrying on with COVID for a moment, this was featured in Rebel News, far-right activist organisation. I get all of that, so I found it on MSN. Health authorities in New South Wales, through, here's a number for you, $775.8 million worth of COVID protective gear in the bin. Apparently, it was faulty or past its use-by date. $775.8 million worth. Ladies and gentlemen, your government's budget surplus just thrown in the bin. There you go. I didn't know that. That's a big number. Who would have thought maybe that could have, I don't know, maybe been spent or allocated somewhere a little bit more useful. But I actually had a fair bit of difficulty staying on topic this week. Feeling a little bit tired, but that aside, that probably contributed to my the squirrel nature of my mind a bit this week. But I did struggle to stay on topic. Just a bit to think about. Here, our federal government managed to get the religious discrimination bill passed through the lower house, House of Representatives, if you wish. And that was designed to protect people of faith in public. But despite the protections it would have offered people of all sorts of religions, not just Christianity. The government, once it passed the lower house, they withdrew it from a Senate debate. So, essentially, that would have offered religious-based or faith-based entities, say a Christian school, to hire people of that particular faith, and as a condition of their employment there, then the prospective employee would have to agree to or sign a declaration of faith or a statement of faith. Basically, I uphold the tenets of this religion, I believe this, yes, I'm happy to go along with that. Would have protected, at a federal level, would have provided protection for those sorts of institutions, as well as protecting individuals in secular workplaces from discrimination based on religious grounds. Now, the corporate media, whom I'm increasingly, I was going to be sarcastic and say who I increasingly love more daily, but that's an outright lie. I don't have a lot of time for them these days. If you heard any of what was going on, heard any of the noise around that debate, you could be forgiven for thinking that the only thing that this religious discrimination bill was going to do was to provide protection for schools who wish to expel a student based on their sexuality or gender identity, because that was what was trotted out time and time again. Now, to reference my weekly word from last week, as a loud vehicle drives past, they're in a hurry. To reference my weekly word from last week, which was having a look at that Christian school that decided, for reasons unknown, to put that specific clause in an enrolment contract, which didn't help this debate, obviously. Didn't help any of the conversations around this discrimination bill. But the two were actually not related at all. It was just unfortunate timing by this independent school in Brisbane. Despite what corporate media will tell you, the expulsion, exclusion, suspension, cancellation of enrolment, phrase it how you like, for students who are gay or are struggling through that sort of identity, that doesn't happen in Christian schools. It doesn't. Plain and simple, it doesn't happen. Okay? So, I don't know why the insistence that that was indeed the case, aside from the corporate media's just crusade, if I can use that word lightly, against, all things religious, basically, or all things Christian. All children, if I read the Bible correctly, if I understand the Bible correctly, more to the point, Jesus said, "Let the children come." He was never too busy for children. And I take Scripture to mean that all children are made in the image of God, which means all children have intrinsic value because they're made in the image of God, lest he not value his own image. Now, that's not, that's neither here nor there regarding any struggles of identity that people may or may not have, but, excluding a student or expelling a student, cancelling an enrolment for the search for identity, and that's essentially what that exploration is, and, many teenagers go through searching for their identity and meaning and whatnot. That diminishes the fact that all children have value in the eyes of God. So it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. If this bill had passed, this religious discrimination the Religious Protection Bill. Forgotten the exact name of it. But if it had passed as it was intended, what it would have done was actually add religion to sex, age, disability, and race as protected attributes under federal law. Now, some states here in Australia, their anti-discrimination laws cover religion. We'll have that as part of the things you can't discriminate against. Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania, and Western Australia. Not so in New South Wales and South Australia. So the 4 states I mentioned, their existing anti-discrimination laws cover religion. Not so in New South Wales and South Australia. So what that would have meant was that people of faith at a federal level, okay, would have had protection against discrimination in employment, education, provision of goods and services, etc. Okay? And so faith-based schools, for example, these laws would have enshrined formally at a federal level that they had the right to hire staff based on their adherence to that particular religion. That's what it meant. All right? So former employee of an independent school further north, that way, I think the way I'm facing. Further up the Queensland coast here, when I was offered that job, I had to sign a statement of faith. Yes, I agree to these things. I agree to your doctrinal statement. That's what I had to do. So that would have meant that was enshrined in law at a federal level. Schools of faith, faith-based institutions, faith-based entities, faith-based businesses have the right to do that. See, Victoria has got an Equal Opportunity Act, and they are trying very, very hard to remove faith-based schools and entities and businesses. They're trying to remove that right from them, and federally this would have protected it. So this sort of sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole, which often happens with my mind. I start out looking at one thing and end up philosophizing and thinking along lines that I never intended. And with all of this, I arrived at a point that I've arrived at frequently, really, over the last several years, really. Not to toot my own horn here or promote myself. I did do a Masters of Education, Leadership and Management through a university here. I may have mentioned that before. First assignment was on postmodernism. I didn't get postmodernism, had no idea what it was about. Could not figure out where to start. That's because there is nowhere to start with postmodernism. It doesn't mean anything. It means everything's a power struggle and there is no objective reference to anything. It's what you want. So I arrived back there. I arrived at the point of thinking, well, words actually matter. They do. Words have meaning. Not what I think a word means. Words have a meaning outside of my interpretation. They have to. Otherwise, they are, by definition, meaningless. And it's been a few instances over the last couple of years where it's only one side of the cultural or political or social spectrum takes a subjective approach to language. You might say, they're just working through their issues. I'm a little bit more cynical and say they're deliberately manipulative. And the first few examples that came to mind straight away, again, regarding COVID, we don't have to go that far back. If you are against or opposed to the mandating of a vaccine, then you are anti-vax. The anti-vax used to mean, or should still mean, opposed to the use of a vaccine. Not opposed to the forced use of a vaccine. I've said it before, vaccines are wonderful. They are a miracle of modern medicine. We don't have polio anymore, vaccine. We very rarely have measles, vaccine. Very rarely have mumps, vaccine. Okay? I go and get a flu vaccine every year, since we're bearing all our medical information out. I don't mind that one, because that's the flu vaccine's not a controversial one, apparently. But I go get that one every year. It seems to keep me healthy. Healthier than when I didn't take it. So whatever's in that works for me. May not work for other people. Don't go take it. Works for me, I do. Vaccines are great. I'm opposed to the forcing everybody to do it. It's not an anti-vax sentiment. Okay? If you're opposed to the mandating of a mask, you've got to wear masks. Well, if you're opposed to that being mandated or forced upon people, you're anti-science. And you go, no, I just don't see the point in forcing an 8-year-old to wear a mask. What good does that do them? Doesn't do them any good. If they wish to wear a mask, I guess that's up to them and their parents. Not up to me. I don't care. It's between me and my children. They won't be wearing a mask. My choice. I'm not opposed to wearing a mask. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. I don't care. I'm not opposed to science. Science is wonderful. Science is brilliant. As a religious person, science is brilliant. Science is great. I have some marvellous scientific discoveries. If that's where it stopped, then okay, you could convince me that they're just scared, they're just emotional, they're not ready to hear an opposing point of view. But that is, of course, until everybody who turns up at an anti-mandate protest, okay, a protest or a gathering of people who are opposed to mandates, it's until you start calling them racist, misogynist, homophobic, far right, ... There's a large protest going on in Canada at the moment. You may have heard of it, you may not have. Depends which corporate media outlets you follow. There's a lot of people involved. All right? A lot of people involved. And they're opposed to, basically, there's a whole lot of truck drivers that have shut down one of them. The main cities, or the main central business districts of one of the main cities in Canada, and are not moving until the mandates are gone. Now, that's a peaceful protest and all of that, but what's the Canadian Prime Minister call them? He calls them racist. So, you tell me, what is the correlation between being opposed to the forced medical procedures? What's the correlation between a forced medical procedure and thinking one race is superior than another? I haven't figured that correlation out yet. Maybe it exists, I don't know. But I didn't think so. Yeah, Joe Rogan, he's a comedian. I'm not a huge fan of his comedy necessarily, but a lot of people are. He's a very successful comedian, that is for sure. Hosts his own podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, commentates on mixed martial arts. Very hard-working man, very honest man. He's under fire from that very same side of politics for simply having conversations. He has conversations with people from all walks of life, from all sides of the political, the social, the cultural spectrum, and he has long-form conversations, 3-4 hours sometimes. He had on some very experienced doctors and scientists who held a point of view that was contrary to the mainstream or corporate narrative. What's his podcast labelled? Misinformation. And if that wasn't enough, a compilation video is released of him saying a particular word completely. It's mishmashed together. It's taken from 10 years of his show into about 2 minutes where he says a particular word and they go, oh, see, look, he's racist. Again, it's ridiculous. These words are thrown around like they just mean whatever I want it to mean. And the thing is, who are the people that it affects? Who are the people that come begging and grovelling for apologies? It is the people who aren't racist. I mean, if you think of an actual racist, if you went to them and said, you're racist, what's the response going to be? It's going to be, yeah. If you say that to someone who so obviously isn't, they're going to go, no, I'm not. I'm so sorry. What have I said and done that's offensive? And I see Christians becoming involved in it. I don't know, social media it's an interesting place, said with the full knowledge that that's a little bit, hypocritical coming from me who's trying to use social media to launch a sort of business. But I understand the echo chambers that exist. If we go to the Bible, Proverbs 20:15 says, there is gold and abundance of costly stones, but, love the buts, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. There is gold and abundance of costly stones, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. Let me ask you this. Why do we still have such faith in government? Why do we still have such trust in government? Think about it. I'm not... You think of whatever example you want, but I would just go back to the last 2 years. How often have the goalposts moved? How often have the agendas changed? And how often is it rules for thee, but not for me? The Victorian opposition leader, as well as a former Australian Football League coach, were fined, for not wearing a mask inside Parliament House. There was only a small sporting event held a few days ago. Well, probably not terribly big here in Australia, but the Super Bowl, fairly big event. Most people know what the Super Bowl is. Held in Los Angeles. Well done to the Los Angeles Rams. Not that I'm a particular follower of any NFL team, but well done to the Rams, and commiserations to the Bengals. A-list celebrities, wealthy people, walking around no masks, the people that serve them drinks, check their tickets, all of that, in a mask. The youth orchestra that performed, masked. Why do we still trust government? Why are we not holding them accountable? Why do we trust media? Why is there still an intrinsic trust that what media tell us is true? Why do we trust people that so obviously are driving agendas? Proverbs 16:20. Jumping around Proverbs a bit tonight. Proverbs 16:20. Whoever gives thought to the word will discover good. Whoever gives thought to the word will discover good, and blessed is he who trusts in the government. Oh no. Blessed is he who trusts in corporate media. No. Blessed is he who trusts in the Lord. I'll read all of that again. Whoever gives thought to the word will discover good, and blessed is he who trusts in the Lord. Maybe it's time we start saying no to government. We don't trust you. No, corporate media, we don't trust you. Open our Bibles and go, Lord, we trust you. We trust you. And on that uplifting note, until next week, God bless.